The three successfully drew close to the portable battery, bombarding it with countless attacks using their fists wrapped in exoskeleton armor. The exoskeleton that was rooted to the joints released smoke. As they used more power, they instantly destroyed the portable battery, causing it to fall to its side as it cracked open. After taking down the remaining portable batteries, the three sprinted toward Han Xiao, each step moving them 7 to 8 meters ahead, with an overwhelming killing intent completely directed toward him. Han Xiao's gaze remained unfazed as he pulled out his tablet, quickly unleashing another hidden weapon. The trailer shook violently as two second-generation rovers rushed out to Han Xiao's side. Instantly, they activated. With both hands, the machine gun released its rounds, as their chests shot out mini rocket missiles, ravaging the three test subjects. The damage was dealt heavily but was almost entirely blocked by the exoskeleton armor, with only its endurance dropping. The three test subject stats were also exposed. Based on your level, you acquired the following information. Super Soldier Experimental Body, level 40. The three test subject stats were considered extremely low for LV-40. With such a high level but low level stats, it meant that they had no potential. Individually, their health points were very low, but the defense and endurance provided by the exoskeleton was able to reduce the damage to the body to a large extent. The second-generation rovers fired several rounds, which only took off a fifth of their health bar. Han Xiao realized that experimental body was actually at LV-45, and his stats were at an even higher level than his two counterparts. Perhaps he was the leader of the three. Take the briefcase with the red triangle marking from the trailer. I have something I want you to do. Frenzied Sword instantly carried out the orders, carrying the briefcase in hand. Inside it was a bomb with massive destructive power. Han Xiao quickly scribbled down the task and tossed it over. Take your unfulfilled dreams and explode into glorious sparks. Frenzied Sword unconsciously gulped down his saliva. Go for it, youngster. I'll leave the stage to you, Han Xiao casually remarked as he continued to barrage the test subject with attacks. I got it. Frenzied Sword clenched his jaw. The rewards from the task were extremely attractive and could definitely make up for the death penalty. Steadying his heart, he leaped forward, lunging onto No. 43 as a fist pierced through his chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood and clenched his teeth as he activated the bomb in the briefcase. Boom! A mini mushroom-shaped cloud rose up into the skies. The sweltering wave of hot air mixed with dust exploded, and the fully equipped Han Xiao was splattered with dirt. Han Xiao suddenly threw aside Red Falcon, reloaded the Ghost Sniper as he activated, reinforcing it with, and fired. The bullet, with blue light trailing behind it, disappeared from sight as it shot straight through No. 44 seconds head. Blood spurted out like an arrow, leaving a thin, long streak of blood on No. 44. Just one more step, and he would have been able to reach Han Xiao. His still eyes had a trace of unwillingness. This scene was far too familiar to Han Xiao. Fighting with a mechanic, distance was always the determining factor between a win or a loss. Many other enemies had fallen right before reaching their target. Just like this. It's a shame. Even if you managed to engage me in close-quarter combat, you wouldn't have lived. Han Xiao shook his head. There were still many cards that he had not shown yet. These immature test subjects were far from his match. The battle this time could be considered an easy fight. Mass-produced assembly line soldiers were the easiest enemies for him to take on. Frenzied Sword sacrificed his virgin death. 10 seconds later, he was revived next to the trailer. Looking at the quest rewards and enemy kill experience, he could not hold back his grin. The Germinal team that had come to intercept him had been eliminated. The heated battlegrounds were already at the pinnacle of its battle. Stardragons and Germinal's foot soldiers had both been massacred. In the battlegrounds, Sleepy Winter taunted, "Did I see that right? Is that Frenzied Sword?" Han Xiao's battle was very conspicuous. They saw Frenzied Sword's ID floating above his head and got a shock. Twinkle Fried Rice was at a loss. Even the cold, prideful Rainy Kim had her mouth wide open. Sleepy Winter remembered that even at the internal examinations, Frenzied Sword rejected his goodwill and did not enter the Stardragon army. So, how could he be on the battleground now? And by self-destructing, he defeated a high-level monster. They saw all of it happen. If my eyes didn't play tricks on me, that black-clothed person he's following. That was the Black Phantom, who appeared a while ago at Bighorn Mountain, Rainy Kim suddenly said. Frenzied Sword and the three of them had started on the same foot, but now he seemed to have gotten way ahead of them. It made Sleepy Winter feel a little pressured. And curious as well. No wonder he didn't want to join us during the internal beta. What exactly happened to Frenzied Sword? Why is he with Black Phantom? The battle was raging on the Tedramira River. Hesla was responsible for securing the waters. A naval formation was stationed at the estuary, and a huge portion of them were battleships loaded with large-caliber artillery. The German Navy was bombarded from a distance of over 10 kilometers away. Carp and Shark units have been preloaded with torpedoes. Await Germinals' entry and then fire away. Feed them full with a round of firepower. As for the offense formation, maintain the intensity of firepower, no change. Sonar scanners take note of the surrounding waters. There could be a chance for Germinal reinforcements to appear. The troops that were deployed to fight the battle surrounded and harassed the Germinal fleet. Using bombs as their main form of attack, this caused quite some trouble for the Germinal fleet. There were bound to be some lucky cannonballs that escaped their intercepting fire, and when this happened, 3 of their ships sank. As the fleet's main purpose was to evacuate, their weaponry was not sufficient to wage a war. However, Germinals still had a plan of their own. A fighter jet poured another wave of ammunition, and while the pilot was preparing to make another round, a shroud of dark fog exploded around him all of a sudden. A figure appeared out of thin air. It was a demon with dark eyeshadow and ear studs, with a sharp blade in his hand. He quickly sliced through the pilot's throat, splashing blood upon the window. The fighter jet crashed down in the water with the pilot's corpse. The demon smiled coldly and disappeared, leaving only a dash of black fog. Hela stepped onto the bow of the ship. The wind was blowing through that red hair of hers. She took in a deep breath, raising both her hands as though worshipping the sun. Gray air slowly flowed through from the fresh dead bodies in the battlefield. It gathered from all directions and tingled Hela's 5 senses. Her face flushed as if she had breathed in God's medicine. She closed her eyes and then opened them even wider than before. An invisible sound wave rose from her lungs out to her throat, and she screamed. It was like a ghost's piercing scream. The eyes of the pilots in the sky burst, their ears bleeding. Their brains were shaken into a state of confusion. The pilots fell one after another like broken kites, crashing onto the ground and water. They were fried into balls of fire. A no-fly zone had formed in the sky, and the fighter jet formation had single-handedly been taken down by Hela. The remaining fighter jets received orders and hurriedly retreated. This was the horrible threat of military operations. They required people to operate the machines. If the operator was too weak, Hela's killing threat could disrupt their mind. Aquamarine's technological advancements did not hold much against Hela's mental disruption skills. Only a few reconnaissance drones continued to track and observe the sky. Renet teleported to Hela's side, with one hand painfully rubbing his head. His nose was bleeding, and he had a dark, gloomy expression. "Were you trying to kill me as well?" Hela gave him a cold shoulder, refusing to answer. Renet could only swallow this breath, not daring to provoke her. Hesla's high-ranking officers had been paying close attention to the battle. The naval formations made them extremely furious. Anti-sonar submarines. How did the signal not sound anything at all? How far is the enemy's range? These could only be Germinal's submarines. Where did they come from? Could it be that Germinal had planned this all along, to withdraw some troops from Andria? Or was there a secret base on an island nearby? No matter the reason, the enemy had reinforcements, and they now needed to deal with the unexpected situation. Germinal's fleet took this chance. They changed their formation. The ship sailed to the shore, opened up, and lowered the slats, providing a bridge for the ground troops to cross. The edge of the stern dragged along the shore of the beach. This method came with a huge risk of beaching the ship. Other ships would throw a hook to link the ship. That way, even if the ship became stuck, it could be pulled back to sea anytime. The root of Lin Yu's confidence came from their submarine team. They were reinforcements that Germinal's forces had called for early on. They relied on this ambush, breaking Hesla's blockade and strategic formation. In order to break through Stardragon's ambush, Uger had lost more than half of the troops, and when this opportunity arose, he immediately ordered the team to speed up and rush toward the barge ship. Stardragon's assault troops, which were on standby, became anxious. What shall we do? If they waited any longer and the Germinal organization's forces managed to link up successfully, there would be no more chances. The assault troops were all from Stardragon's Division 13. They were all specialists and elites. They could hear their superiors command. It was only one word: forward. Wearing his power suit, Zhang Wei stood at the front of the battleship as the barrier. Lambert dealt damage by sniping. This assault boat did not only have Zhang Wei's team of 4, as Lin Yao was not taking part in battle. There were still 10 elite fighters. The battleship surged forward through the waves, surfing through the onslaught of bullets and missiles before it collided into the Germinal ship with a loud bang. The infiltration team jumped aboard and began exchanging blows intensely with the Germinal soldiers. The infiltration team's attack strategy only had two goals. The first was to massacre the barge's attack forces and destroy the land vehicles that were on the boat. The second was to take control of the boat. As Hesla's backup troop did not arrive as planned, the infiltration team was not in a good position. They were falling into a difficult battle. The Germinal organization's plans were affected, causing their progress to slow down. The Germinal executive officers set out to counter Stardragon's infiltration team. Zhang Wei's team was struggling to get the upper hand on the barge. Suddenly, a strong gale came rushing over without warning, like a ghost. The team's internal alarms rang on high alert as they hurried to dodge it. However, they still could not dodge the shockwaves of the wind. A strong wave of dizziness overcame them. Clenching their teeth, they looked toward the direction where the enemy was standing. There, they saw Hila, whom they had once crossed swords before. Hila had a cold expression. She still remembered she had once fought the Stardragon soldiers. Last time, she had taken a small loss because of them. Remembering that, her killing intent was more murderous than before. Huyu had a pained expression on his face as he held up both his guns with the intent to aim. But with a light sneer from Hila, her voice carried forth an overwhelming psychological suppression from the Necromastery ability. As if he had taken a hard blow, Huyu staggered backward as his nose spurted blood. Hila did not even spare him a look as she turned her gaze to Lai Yalan. Her killing intent was clear. This was the special female assassin that had used the lightweight mechanical arm. She definitely knew Zero's whereabouts. Lai Yalan had a look of steely determination. She pulled out her foldable machete as she lunged toward Hila fearlessly. As the pugilist in the team, she had to initiate battles. Hopefully I can last the first bout. Lai Yalan quietly clenched her jaw. As long as she could hold out till Hila's next attack, she had confidence that she could close and to restrict Hila's movements such that she would not have time to release another one of those psychological attacks. Even though Hila's abilities were strong, she was only using the attack on a superficial level, and every release required build-up to release the skill. Naive, Hila remained expressionless. The next second, a sudden large wave of power surged toward the side of her ribs, causing her to fly off sideways as she collided into the side of an SUV, and her ribs throbbed with pain. Hila was in so much pain that her face turned ashen. With a deep heave, the necromancer's power on her hand suddenly dissipated. In her shock, she turned to look at the source of the attack. There was a van driving along the shore, staying alongside the boat. From the driver's window seat, a sniper was hinged on the window as a black gloved palm held onto this deadly weapon with its muzzle releasing thick smoke. Han Zio cocked the gun, and another smoking bullet was released from the muzzle. Driving at a constant speed, it drove alongside Germinal's boat. When they reached the valley, he had spotted traces that Stardragon might let Germinal troops off the hook. So, Han Zio drove to the lake beforehand, his target to capture the Germinal executive officers. He spotted Hila in an instant, then he saw Zhang Wei and the others. Slightly taken aback, he did not expect this coincidence. Seeing his former teammate fall into danger, Han Zio did not say anything else before pulling out Red Falcon and firing. Hila's defensive air barrier was weakened to a large extent, and its penetration abilities dissipated, turning into momentum that pushed her away. The interface displayed Hila's abilities. After 1 year, Hila had leveled up from LV30 to LV40, and Han Zio was at the same level as her. He could see her stats, and her two strongest stats were Mystery and Intelligence. Her abilities were described as well: Dictating Death and Capturing Souls. Potential rating, S. Grim Reaper's power is able to heal flesh wounds, under regular circumstances, plus 500% health regeneration speed. While using energy, plus 1000%, 2000% health regeneration speed. Scent of Death supports your life, vitals are immune to critical attacks. Soul Disregard, Dictators of Death fear nothing. Plus 20% resistance to negative effects. Plus 30% psychological resistance. Ignore sudden death. Death is like the wind, always by your side, will not receive any fatal attacks. When health points are lower than 1%, a special status effect will be obtained. Han Zio was helpless. These abilities made Hila practically impenetrable. No, it should not be described as impenetrable, but rather like a cockroach that would not die no matter how much one hit it, unless one used an extremely strong attack ability to finish Hila off. Oh, I forgot, she was even immune to instant death. Forget it, I'm probably better off just taking a nap. Han Zio shook his head. As expected of the future big boss, the number of her abilities is almost as high as Bennett's. The only difference between the main roles is just luck. Hila, the hardest person to take on, was the first person he had met, but Jiang Wei's team had fallen into a difficult situation. Since he had the means to help out, he naturally would not stand aside and not lend a helping hand. After all, they had fought together side by side before. Taking advantage of Hila's distraction, Lai Yalan closed in and slashed at her. Hila, as she staggered back in pain, was infuriated by Han Zio's sneak attack. Meanwhile, her wound's recovery could be seen by the naked eye. However, her being on the boat meant that she could not take out the sniper on the shore. Hila's movements were instantly restricted, and with the sniper's uncanny ability to find openings, he managed to stop her from counter-attacking at the right moment every time. This synchronized perfectly with Lai Yalan, Jiang Wei, and the others' movements. Hila realized that she had actually fallen into a situation where she could not retaliate at all. Thus, she could only stay on the defensive, dodging every attack. But from Jiang Wei and the others' perspective, it was a ray of light for them. Originally, the team of 4 had created a battle strategy, but after Hu Yu received heavy injuries, it rendered him unable to fight and left a hole in their teamwork. But that sniper was able to patch up that gap. At every critical moment, he managed to fire a timely shot to assist them. It was as if he was someone who had a solid grasp of their fighting style. Who was he? Lai Yalan and Jiang Wei began to have such thoughts. Hu Yu, who was still suffering from dizzy spells, could only fend off regular soldiers. Watching Jiang Wei and the others coordinate with the sniper, he suddenly felt as if that sniper was actually a real team member of theirs, and it was he who was only an outsider. Hila is held up. Lin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. Looking toward the van at the shore, he squinted. Black Phantom, what is he doing here? They were almost at the end of the estuary. Just slightly ahead of them was the sea. Lin Yu was in dire need for Hila's abilities to deal AoE damage. She definitely had to get out of that situation. He ordered, Yuger, get rid of Black Phantom. Yuger had already boarded the ship. Overwhelming with his dark purple aura and without any further orders, he was about to lunge toward Han Zio, who was in the van. But suddenly, he sensed a wave of energy from someone with pugilist powers that were equal to his. Division 13 seconds trump card. Yuger's face was solemn, and he no longer cared about Han Zio. He was locked onto the middle-aged man. Both were powerful martial artists, and as their eyes met, it was as though a bomb just exploded. Both of them were fuming, and their fists collided like 2 streaks of transverse lightning striking the sky. The scene seemed to freeze while the sky roared. Division 13 had played their trump card. Lin Yu had no choice but to send out Yuger, who was at the same rank, to fight back. Exasperated, he ordered, Renette, go get rid of that Black Phantom. Easy, Renette uttered. As an assassin with a teleportation ability, Renette believed he was the nemesis of all snipers, even if it was Black Phantom. The next second, black mist flashed, and Renette was nowhere to be seen. All of a sudden, he appeared in the driver's seat of the truck and was going to stab the sword through Han Zio's head. Teleportation. Han Zio was alert and immediately activated the full-body electromagnetic armor. However, the sword was unable to reach even his armor. Frenzied Sword had reacted quickly. He had rushed to block the sword for Han Zio and died on the spot. Both were taken aback. Eyes filled with bloodlust, Han Zio reacted within seconds. He grabbed Renette by his hand using one arm while he activated the thermoelectrical incisor gloves on his other hand. Amid the buzzing of the electricity, he slapped the gloves onto Renette's face, and immediately, a burning smell filled the air. The shrill scream was ear-piercing. Renette was in crazy pain, and he teleported straight back to the ship. As he tried to move his arm, he realized that Han Zio was grabbing onto his arm. Han Zio was also brought onto the barge. Han Zio moaned angrily and just would not let go of Renette's face. With his 5 fingers penetrating Renette's skull, the damage dealt was increasing at the speed of waterfall. The pain was so unbearable that Renette let out painful beastly cry, and his expression changed. Han Zio abruptly raised his other hand and gave him a violent slap. The strength of that slap was over 50 points and instantaneously smashed Renette's brain into a charred lump of meat. You've killed Renette. You've gained 60,000 EXP. Target was 6 levels higher than you. Energy expended, 82%. You've gained additional 49,200 EXP. Han Zio stood up and finally understood the situation he was in. First, he got brought onto the ship by Renette, and then Germinal troops were all around him, with their weapons all pointing at him and preventing his escape. Completely surrounded, Han Zio's eyes froze as he covered his chest with his hands. Fire, endless bullets drowned Han Zio. All of a sudden, with Han Zio in the center, a strong invisible force was released. Enemies and vehicles within the range of 20 meters all flew out and fell into the river. His chest was not covered by the electromagnetic armor, revealing a palm-sized big precise device tied to his chest. The device was creaking, and slowly it became softer, eventually coming to a stop. Field repulsive machine. Type, extraordinary machine. Quality, green. Energy capacity, 110/150th. Effective range, 20 meters. Effect, releases a strong repulsive field and pushes away and objects in the range. Cooldown time, 6 minutes. Remarks, get lost. Hanzio pulled out his 2/3 generation Berserk Eagles, activated his electromagnetic hover boots, and jumped onto another ship. Since I am here, I might as well kill some people. With Renette's blood on his body, Hanzio started his killing on the barge. The Berserk Eagles had bullets coming out of them non-stop, and because the recoil was too strong, he was unable to move his wrist. The bullets penetrated through every single Germinal soldier, either through their chest or head shot, leaving the floor full of corpses. It was just like a dark movie whereby no one could stop him. Soon enough, he arrived on the ship with Lai Yalin. Hanzio's willful actions soon caught the attention of everyone. Lin Yu was furious. Renette, that idiot, did not just get himself killed but had even brought the monster onto the ship. Their ship was about to leave the estuary, and yet he still made such a mess. Quickly, get rid of that black phantom, Lin Yu demanded. As their commander, he could not attack easily. If he did, there would be no one left to observe the battle. Hila had long discovered Hanzio, and she was already full of anger. She clapped her hands and created a mental shock to deter Lai Yalin and the others. She took a deep breath and gathered all the power of the corpses, turned, and screamed at Hanzio. She used all the gathered power on Hanzio, and the air rippled like a sound wave. This was like an exploding bomb in the brain. A sudden pain hit Hanzio. It felt as though someone was using a spoon to stir all around his brain. The sky in his sight seemed to be tilted as he lost control of his body and stumbled to one side. Feeling nauseous, the veins on Hanzio's temples seemed to jump vigorously as if they were going to explode. Bearing the pin-pricking pain in his head, Hanzio whipped out a gray grenade from his waist and threw it out. His accuracy was compromised, and the grenade landed 10 meters away from Hila. Hila thought that this was the side effect from him being dizzy and did not pay attention to it. She decided to return with a more impactful one. But out of the blue, the grenade detonated. There was no flame nor shrapnel, only an ear-piercing high-pitched sound that rushed directly into her eardrums. Hila's brain started hurting, and she felt the world was turning, too. You can make people dizzy, so can I. Hanzio gnashed his teeth. Burst grenade uses high-frequency sound to disrupt the eardrum. Range, 50 meters. Effects, causes one to feel dizzy. Magnitude of effects determined by endurance. Hanzio knew no mercy and continued shooting coldly. The bullets landed all over Hila's body. Eventually, when the bullets ran out, he set the electromagnetic hover boots to the highest power, and before Hila could retaliate, he kicked Hila. She flew up into the air, knocked onto the railing, and finally fell into the river. The river was stained with blood as Hila's body sank. Hanzio did not believe that Hila would die so easily, and there was no news on the interface. He expected that after all these attacks, Hila would be able to recover soon enough, but there was no need to worry for the moment. This enemy is so difficult to kill, I can't just tackle her right now. Hanzio. Hanzio. Who is that? I think you've got the wrong person. It's you. Stop pretending. I could recognize you even if you turned into ash. Lai Yalin gnashed her teeth. Damn, how did she recognize me? Based on my polished acting skills, how could I still be exposed? Hanzio was dumbfounded. This young lady is really unpredictable. Members of the troops were stunned. They were doubtful about Lai Yalin's judgment, but at the same time, they were a little convinced. At that moment, Hanzio, who was in full black, holding Berserk Eagles in both hands, suddenly revealed his own face. Oh, that's what you actually look like. Jiang Wei murmured as he finally understood why Hanzio had always worn a mask in the past. In the past, when they were working together for Division 13, Hanzio had always worn a mask. Members of the troops never saw what he looked like and never knew Hanzio's true identity. At the moment, they thought that the face they saw on the facial simulator was Hanzio's actual face. They had expected him to be quite handsome. No one expected that the famous Black Phantom would turn out to be a former comrade. Wait, he became the Black Phantom of the Darknet organization, and the higher-ups were so ambivalent about it. Was this actually a secret mission? You got it wrong. No time for nonsense now, the enemies are here, Hanzio said sternly. Lai Yalin raged. It's no use even if you deny, right? The higher-ups must have sent him for a secret mission. That's why he cannot reveal his identity. Could it be that Stardragon is going after the Dark Net next? The crowd was unknowingly forming a misunderstanding about the situation. The conversation ended quickly. On the battlefield, everyone could only suppress their doubts and focus on dealing with the enemies. A Germinal executive headed straight for Han Zio. Han Zio pointed toward the executive with his hands forming a pistol, and signaled to the Stardragon team to join forces against the enemy. Jiang Wei and his team naturally had no objection and started fighting by his side. As the Germinal executive rushed over, his body suddenly swelled up like a balloon and transformed into a 4-meter-tall white beast. The white beast started running on the deck like a wolf, and his heavy body caused the deck to vibrate. He opened his big mouth and pounced over. This action was full of elegance and strength. Transfiguration was a common branch from the Esper family. They could take different forms, some weaker and others stronger. The forms they took on could be so strange that they could even be out of the imagination. The great white wolf hopped around the deck as it tried to attack. Han Zio felt it was no one of his business. He allowed Jiang Wei and his power suit to act as the tank while Han Zio stood at the side and tried to launch some sneak attacks. Sometimes he would use his thermoelectrical incisor gloves to slice a piece of meat off the wolf. Hu Yao also used his berserk eagles, and his action was swift as the coursing river. Initially, he was proud of himself. After witnessing how skillful and minimalistic Han Zio was and how he would never miss a single bullet, Hu Yao felt like he was making a fool of himself. You really live up to your name, Mr. Black Phantom. Such dexterity in handling double guns, Hu Yao admired secretly. The great white wolf was beaten up badly. Realizing that it was beyond its ability to retaliate and other executives were unable to help, it turned and fled the scene. Han Zio had already expected this, and right then, he fired his berserk eagles at the great white wolf's eyes, activating This time, the damage was increased by 3.2 times. Boom! The great white wolf's eyes exploded, and it groaned in pain as it fell onto the deck. The whole barge shook for a second. Jiang Wei immediately dealt another blow. With his ammunition emptied, Jiang Wei's armor extended into a golden sword. He leapt as his exoskeleton provided him with the energy, and latched onto the great white wolf's body as he slashed it violently many times. Just then, the backup troops finally arrived at the port and let off a signal flare to signal for them to retreat. At that moment, Jiang Wei turned and asked Han Zio, Han, Black Phantom, do you want to leave with us? No, thanks. Han Zio waved his hand. Alright, thanks for your help, I'll remember this. Stardragon will also remember this. Jiang Wei's speech had a hidden meaning. Together with his troops, he turned and leapt onto the assault boat. Lin Yalan stared in Han Zio's direction. As members of the Division 13 were withdrawing, Han Zio activated his electromagnetic skating shoes and jumped onto the shore. He rushed for the truck that had been following him around automatically, jumped into the driver's seat, switched it to manual driving, and left the shore speedily. Hila, who was wet through and through, climbed onto the ship. Fighting off her dizziness, she glared at the departing truck. She was always the one treating people like that, but this time around, she had actually had a taste of her own medicine. Black Phantom, I will remember you. Hila's eyes froze as her body healed quickly. The Germinal troops arrived at the port and released a torpedo, causing the sea mines to explode. With the water exploding, they successfully entered the open sea. Hesla's navy also came by and was not reconciled to not giving chase. Both ships were restricted by each other. In the midst of the firing the cannons, the Germinal ship sank. Based on the battle strategies, the Germinal's forces broke free from the attacks and escaped. However, based on the damages suffered from the battle, Germinal lost 70% of their troops while Hesla's losses were less than 10% of what Germinal had lost. With that being said, victory was definitely not Germinal's. Although they had not been able to stop all the Germinal forces, both nations were able to achieve the battle objective of damaging the enemy. All in all, the winners of the battle were Stardragon and Hesla. The battle is over. Han Zio glanced at Frenzied Sword, who seemed to have revived and was sitting beside him, and wrote him a mission with no requirements. Frenzied Sword had taken a stab for him, and thus he would give him some EXP even if he did not need to. The description of the mission was actually the reward for taking a stab for Han Zio, and that made Frenzied Sword surprised. His action was purely voluntarily as he thought it was okay for him to die, but Han Zio must not. He did not expect any reward, and he became even more determined to protect Han Zio. After giving the reward, Han Zio turned to his own interface and grinned from ear to ear. Progress 3/3. The great white wolf that he had fought against with Jiang Wei was a LV-45 character. As it was a joint battle, the additional EXP obtained was little. However, the requirement for advancement could be said to have been completed, which meant, I can advance. Breaking through the blockade made them suffer heavy losses, including the lives of 17 executives. Han Zhao alone had killed 3. When Lin Yu was reporting back to the commander, he emphasized on these statistics. Black Phantom's intervention surprised the commander. It turned quickly into anger as the commander started to feel like the Germinal organization had seemed to turn into a tiger without teeth. Anyone dared to bully it. At the same time, it also increased his hatred for Zero. He had disrupted the plan that they had laid out laboriously, and also put the entire organization in grave danger. The commander remembered his conversation with Zero before he escaped from the lab. It angered him more whenever he thought of how this traitor managed to fulfill his promise. The commander then made people add Black Phantom to the watch list as he had no energy to focus on a small assassin at the moment. The main problem on the commander's mind was the next step of the plan for the organization. Commander, Base 13 has something urgent to report. It is regarding a recent successful test subject from the... This is the observation record. An assistant handed him a report. The moment the commander heard the words test subject, he felt a headache. He was stunned when he looked at the report. The assistant then said, cases like this did not just happen on one person. As you can see on the following list, this phenomenon seems to have occurred on a large scale, and it is spreading like an infectious disease. The commander stayed quiet for a while, looking as if he was digesting the information. He then made a sneer under the mask. There are weird phenomena, but it seems like luck is on our side. The 6 nations will have to start worrying now. In a room on the boat, the light was dim and kept blinking. Hila took off her black combat uniform and faced the mirror to count the number of wounds on her body. The most obvious one was a bullet at the side of her rib, and the dark blood clot that had formed was terrifying. Hila was expressionless as she rubbed the wound to reveal her tender flesh. She looked at the mirror and remembered how her skin used to be smooth and fair with barely any scars. Unlike now, she had so many marks of serious injuries on her body. Hila lowered her eyelids, and her long lashes covered her eyes. She put on her clothes again and went out to stare at the sea silently. She had to lie and wait for the next battle. Jiang Wei and his team took the plane back to Division 13. Say, how did Han Zhao become Black Phantom? Wei Yalan suddenly opened her eyes with a confused look. What? Brother Zhao is Black Phantom? Lin Yao was taken aback as he had not been involved in the battle and did not know about this matter. Jiang Wei then explained the story to him. Lin Yao was flabbergasted and could not help but ask, you couldn't have recognized the wrong person, right? I could recognize him even if he turned into ash. Lin Yalan coldly laughed with confidence. Are we not going to look for him and bring him back? He was embarrassed when he left. He must be on a secret mission. I will ask the higher-ups when I report to them, Jiang Wei said as he shook his head. Lin Yalan could not help but add, do help me ask when he is intending to repay me as well. Jiang Wei was lost for words. Little Lin, you do not seem to be hurt. Wei Yalan's face suddenly slammed down as she turned her head, ignoring her. Dai Suzu was not bothered. Are you guys talking about Black Phantom? I met him once in the past and heard he took part in the war as well. Wei Yalan's eyes lit up. She was very certain that Black Phantom was Han Zhao. Curious about what happened to him after he left Division 13, she looked past her annoyance with Dai Suzu and asked her eagerly, what was he doing when you met him? At that time, his code name was still Mr. Black, a Scorpion-level assassin, who was involved in a defense mission in Seagull City with the leader of the Darknet. Wei Yalan pumped her intently for more information. Have you heard anything else? Dai Suzu raised her eyebrows. Why are you so concerned? I'm curious about him, Wei Yalan explained. She felt that there must have been a deeper reason for Han Zhao becoming Black Phantom. He would not have exposed his identity easily. Curious? Oh no, that would usually be the first step to the beginning of a love story. We must kill that possibility in its cradle. Dai Suzu's eyes froze but her smile remained. She said slowly, oh, I got some information about Black Phantom from a female assassin with codename Golden Fox. 5 minutes later, the listening crowd was staring with glazed eyes, trying their best to process the huge amount of information. Lin Yao trembled with fear. At some point in time, Lambert stopped wiping his blade. Lin Yalan mumbled under her breath, no wonder he had no physical urge when he was touching me. Hu Yu swallowed dryly and told himself that he would hide away if Han Zhao ever returned to the team. When you meet him next time, be careful. Dai Suzu chuckled, got up, and sashayed away, leaving the group staring at one another. Jiang Wei coughed. He is our teammate after all. Don't discriminate against him. Everyone nodded hesitantly in agreement. After submitting his report, he requested to speak to the secretary. After a few minutes of waiting, his request was approved, and the video communication was put through. Jiang Wei went straight to the point and said, "We saw Han Zhao." The director of the Secret Service was surprised. Jiang Wei phrased himself carefully and explained how they had discovered that Black Phantom was Han Zhao. He stared blankly for a moment before he muffled a chuckle and replied, "You must have confused the two people. How could Black Phantom be Han Zhao? One was a super assassin in the Darknet organization with an extraordinary level of combat capability. Although Han Zhao had demonstrated his capability previously, he was far weaker than Black Phantom. This guess was just too far off the mark." The director of the Secret Service was really amused. He almost blurted out that Han Zhao was Zero, but he stopped himself. The Bureau had tight confidentiality rules that prevented him from disclosing Zero's identity to others. Regarding Han Zhao's real identity, he cannot be Black Phantom. Jiang Wei stared blankly. He thought, perhaps, that this was a hidden message from the secretary for him to stop being nosy about this issue. "I understand," Jiang Wei replied with a knowing nod. Star Dragon's Division 13 sorted out all the reports and intelligence information and handed the final document to the 7-seat committee. The committee held a meeting to sort out all the important issues that needed to be discussed. And finally, there was only the issue regarding Black Phantom left on the table. "The Darknet came to us previously. They are going to start the shelter program, so they are requesting our aid. So, this should be a friendly gesture from them." The members nodded in agreement. The Darknet had always remained a neutral party. If this was a sign that they are leaning toward the Six Nations, it would definitely be a good turn of events. The 7-member committee quickly concluded that it would support the Darknet's shelter program and approved their request for material aid. This was their opportunity to return the favor and win them over. Out of the blue, Wang Yuan received a call. His face lit up with joy and exclaimed, "Star Dragon has promised material aid." Bennett was surprised. That was not a small sum, but Star Dragon had agreed to it so readily. He asked, "What did they say?" "Well, they said they are very grateful for our help." Bennett frowned in puzzlement. "Help? What did we do?" On second thought, Bennett realized that Star Dragon must have thought that they had sent Black Phantom. Black Phantom was seen as a representative of the Blood Pact Society, and his actions were inevitably labeled as representing the Darknet organization. Bennett was at a loss, not knowing whether to cry or to laugh. Black Phantom had unintentionally done him a favor. He would definitely not clarify this wonderful misunderstanding. "Well, I guess I owe him a favor then." "Oh, what did Hesla say?" Wang Yuan pushed his black-framed spectacles. With a flash of contempt in his eyes, he snorted, "They are still pushing away the responsibility." Bennett shook his head. He had long known Hesla's way of doing things, and only Star Dragon was easier to talk to. With Star Dragon's assistance, the initial resources are more or less enough. Let's start the shelter program as soon as possible. The war will break out any time now. After flying through the night away from the Tedramira River, he was getting ready for his advancement when Frenzied Sword dropped offline. A player going offline is akin to disappearing. That gave the pilot a shock. Seeing that Han Zhao's expression had remained unchanged, he suppressed his shock. Different players had different peculiarities. Although the world had all kinds of espers that made everyone well accustomed to abnormalities, over time, more and more people would realize the peculiar nature of the player's community, and there would definitely be some interesting developments. Putting aside these thoughts, Han Zhao focused his attention on the interface. The requirements for advancement had been met. Advancement. Han Zhao entered his EXP. Level up LV5. Plus 50 energy, plus 1 dexterity, plus 1 endurance, plus 4 intelligence. After the advancement, Han Zhao's health point conversion ratio increased from 115 to 120. It was obvious to him that his body was stronger. He could feel a ball of energy down in his abdomen, invigorating him. This second advancement did not unlock as many skills as his first advancement did. His first advancement had felt like a complete rebirth, while this second advancement was way smoother a process than his first one. Though not explicit as a description on the interface, Han Zhao noticed that his perception had become more acute. The world was more vivid in his eyes. If he had to describe how the advancement felt, it would be natural. He could feel the breeze flowing around his limbs and smell the mix of particles in the air. His senses were amplified by several notches. The second advancement was a prerequisite to unlock many skills, and of course, the most obvious benefit was that he could upgrade to LV60. My combat capability now, combined with my mechanical equipment, means that I am among the top few fighters in Aquamarine. Even at LV50, my stats are very strong. That is partly because of my expertise and partly because my main vocation is at a high level. This means I can take care of most superhumans without too much difficulty. Han Zio traveled on Darknet's helicopter and finally arrived at another new village on the southern continent after landing several times in between to refill the fuel. This village was also a place where vagrant warlords gathered, and it was called Green Valleyville. Han Zio did not bother to hide himself. The sentry of the Green Valleyville spotted him from far away, and reported right away to the person in charge, Balsas. Upon hearing what the sentry had described, he was shaken. Sounds a little like Black Phantom. Didn't he just interfere with the battle at Tedramura River? Why is he here? I have nothing to do with him. Just the name Black Phantom alone made Balsas anxious. Even though Green Valleyville was heavily armed, he still felt unsafe. Balsas then muttered, "Should we approach him and find out why he is here?" He ordered his assistant to take his place and approach the Black Phantom as he was afraid to do it himself. When the assistant headed out of the gate and walked toward Black Phantom, Balsas moved beside the big gate and observed through the barbed wire fence. He seemed really careful. However, Balsas very soon witnessed a scene that shook him. He saw that the villagers living outside were actually excited and friendly toward the Black Phantom, actually gathering around him. Balsas was surprised. How do all the villagers know about the Black Phantom? Black Phantom is here. We are going to be lucky too. A player with the ID Bun Hit Dog was more exhilarated than the others. He was quite a well-known video game graphic designer, and his 20 Adventure series, which was humor-based and full of content, had gained him a lot of fans. Bun Hit Dog saw Galaxy as a potential television series. As there was limited information online about it, he keenly realized the hidden potential and decided to create a series that introduced and explained Galaxy. Wandering around a new player village, Bun Hit Dog had yet to find the starting point for his series. The first episode of a series was the most important, and he did not wish to do it carelessly. Han Zio's appearance made Bun Hit Dog feel like his chance was finally here. Balsas' assistant approached and nervously swallowed his saliva. He was trembling with fear every time he took a step closer, and he was afraid of getting too close to Han Zio. "What is it? May I know why you are here at Green Valleyville?" the assistant asked as he braced himself. Han Zio took a puff of his cigarette and said, "I'm just walking past here. Don't worry, I'm not here to cause any trouble." The assistant heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Oh, Illumina welcomes you, and Balsas wishes to invite you into the city so that he can give you a treat." "No, thanks, I'll just stay here." Han Zio declined as it would be inconvenient to communicate with the players once he entered the town. Since there would not be anyone who dared refuse him, he would leave once he had gotten the experience. As such, he did not pay attention to Balsas. One could get goosebumps just by staring into Han Zio's eyes. This was one of the effects of having universal reputation. When the assistant returned into the village, Balsas asked, "What did he say?" The assistant then repeated everything that had happened. Just passing by, Balsas frowned and pondered. He ordered, "Get someone to observe Black Phantom and report to me if anything is weird. Also, go get some information from the refugees outside." While Han Zio was getting a windfall in Green Valleyville, the world situation was quietly changing. Stardragon, Hesla, Red Maple, Ordina, Theseus, and Raylan, the Six Nations wipeout operation against the Germinal organization had ended, and the subsequent impact was gradually emerging. Today, the fourth Six Nations conference was held. The topic was about the next step in their plans regarding Germinal, and whether they should go to war or not. The leader of Theseus stood up confidently and said, "I, Raylan, and Stardragon have all agreed to send out our troops." Hesla and Red Maple object. Ordina pondered for 2 seconds. "I give up my vote." Everyone looked as if they had expected it. Though Huey, who was standing by the side, remained calm. There were 2 that agreed, 2 that objected, and 1 that gave up. He had already expected such results. Fuse and Raylan were the toughest, while Stardragon had a strong grudge with Germinal, so they would definitely not miss this chance. Hesla and Red Maple were unwilling to waste money on war. It seemed that Ordina was the greatest slimeball, always thinking about other things instead. During the conference, it was decided that the Six Nations would conduct a large-scale military operation similar to the previous major war that had uprooted the political balance. The Six Nations would move forward and retreat together, attack the Andria mainland from 6 directions, and finally destroy the Germinal organization completely. War is coming. The players in Green Valleyville took a screenshot and showed off the arrival of Black Phantom on the forum, which sparked another round of heated discussions. Previously, it was Bighorn Village. Now, it is Green Valleyville. Will he move on to a new location? Is this high-ranking character arranged by the game developer? The times at which he appears feels weird. If he was a mechanic instructor, his whereabouts would be uncertain. Unless he is the planet protagonist who manages the information written on the net. It doesn't seem like it. I think the planet protagonist and the plot should be related. It is unlikely that we could come in contact so early. Black Phantom should be another type of mysterious character, since it is difficult to switch vocation. Could it be that Black Phantom was sent by the game developers to compensate us? What? Does it mean that in order to switch our vocation, we have to do it now or else we'll miss this opportunity with Black Phantom? The speculation regarding Hanzio had not stopped, and the commotion in Bighorn Village had not subsided. Suddenly, a new post caught his attention. The topic was Galaxy Times. The column is released. Hanzio's face changed as he felt the nostalgia. Hanzio had once been a follower of Galaxy Times, and he would always have the urge to be the first to watch it. Hello players, the male host greeted. This is Galaxy Times, dedicated to sharing first-hand game information. Now let us first review what has happened in the past 10 days. Planet Brighton. The city was like a floating island with 99 towers scattered on the edge of the city, forming a defense, and the main tower in the city center. The large crystal ball at the top of the tower provided magical power to suspend the city. Occasionally, there would be sightings of a dragon across the sky. New players would have a slim chance of survival in this world as it was very easy to hit the death limit. Of course, there was an even more difficult way to start, and that would be Planet Winterfrost. The base of the Hell Demon military troop was also the only one where players could see the galaxy starships. Hell Demon military troop starships were crazy powerful, and this planet was a mix of magic and technology. The richer the resources were for the novice planet, the more challenging it would be at the beginning. In contrast, the difficulty of Aquamarine was moderate, and the technological background was similar to that of many years ago. Unlike other planets where even trash cans on the street could incite the player's curiosity, there were not many surprises on Aquamarine. Next, we'll talk about an incident that happened in Aquamarine. And friends who have been active on the forum all know that Black Phantom is the first mysterious high-ranking character to appear in front of the players. The players do not have much information about him. Black Phantom seems to have a high position, and his identity is extremely mysterious as well. Furthermore, he and Germinal are enemies. Oh, does this mean he's on the same side as the Six Nations? I am not sure. Perhaps only the developers can answer this question. Alright, after listening to this lame joke, let us return to the topic, the male host said. The latest news suggests that Black Phantom has appeared in Green Valleyville of Aquamarine. Therefore, friends who wish to transfer to the mechanic class should seize the opportunity. The Black Phantom is by far the easiest way to obtain the knowledge. However, there has been a different opinion on the forums recently. Some players who transferred to the mechanics department are starting to regret. The female host feigned her surprise. There is such a thing. There was a quarrel at this point, and most of the players had been simply choosing their vocation based on which vocation was the strongest. After they had switched to being a mechanic, they found out that mechanics were not up to their expectations and would naturally be full of complaints. Hanzio narrowed his eyes. This was not totally unexpected. The players would realize sooner or later that the mechanic vocation is not suitable for combat in the early stages. The program continued running. Off the script, the male MC said, "We have just received the unreleased promo clip on the next version of the game from Galaxy. Do take a look." The clips were recorded by new players from every planet, and there were only a few clips from senior players for the time being. The battle scene for Mechanic Vocation was a clip of Black Phantom in action. Hanzio was the first advanced player to demonstrate his combat power. Sniper, rifles, turrets, squadrons, and even the vicious Fury Blade was featured in the clip. The players was all engrossed in the scenes. They were all exhilarating moments. I didn't know I got selected to be in the promotional video. Hanzio was a little surprised. He still remembered last season's promotional video. The scene for the mechanic vocation was just the process to produce a machinery, and most players assumed that it was more of a support role. Hence, only a few players switched to the mechanic vocation. There were some wild beasts spotted around the Green Valleyville, and they had been causing problems for the town. Before Hanzio came, Balsas had used some small sums as a bounty to incentivize the refugees to hunt down the beasts. After some observation, he found out to his surprise that these refugees seemed to have revival spurs and would never really die. Balsas was shocked. It might have been normal for one person to have the revival spur ability, but it would be a different story for an entire group. If I can get these strange refugees to work for me, their revival trait will make for a formidable army. I won't have to fear anyone from Black Pine anymore. Balsas was alarmed. Is Black Phantom here for these refugees too? Does he know about their ability as well? The beasts residing near the town attacked. Countless wild beasts came from the jungle and caused the ground to rumble. Grey devil wolves made up the majority. Their fur was charcoal gray, and they were as big as wild buffaloes. Balsas commanded for the town to be locked up without hesitation and asked his soldiers to ready the machine guns on the watchtowers to fight the beasts. Players that were left outside the town became the buffer zone for them to hold off the beasts. Balsas was glad that he had refugees that could be sacrificed at no cost. Mature grey devil wolves were about LV-20. They pounced into the crowd and ripped apart a player in 2 to 3 bites. You have started emergency quest. Besides the normal players, Hanzio received the emergency quest too. However, to his dismay, the reward was at a newbie standard at only a few thousand EXP. Balsas realized that Hanzio had crawled to the top of the town wall while he was not looking and was watching the battle intensely. Balsas was alarmed. Black Phantom was able to silently crawl up the wall when so many people were staring down at the town wall. This meant that he could silently creep up on anyone he wanted to as well. Indeed, he was living up to his reputation as a skilled and accomplished assassin. The players gave it their all to protect the town. The situation was bloody and violent. The fight between the players and the beasts was a rough one, so some players were live streaming the battle on the forum. Hanzio narrowed his eyes. He decided to join and end this battle quickly. With that, he jumped off the wall. Activating his electromagnetic hover boots, he moved as if there was ice under his feet. He dived into the battle like a bolt of black lightning, zooming through the battlefield, straight to a relatively smaller grey devil wolf, which was old and had little fur left. It was the leader of the pack, and Hanzio noticed it when he was observing just now. Hanzio decided not to snipe these beasts. Sniping would limit the area damage, and he had limited ammo with him. It was the perfect chance for him to see what he could do with his LV-50 attributes against these LV-20 beasts. Hanzio was clad full body in his magnetically controlled retractable armor. He raised his arm to block off the sharp claws of the wolves, and the clashing sound was resounding. The wolves began to crowd in to protect the Wolf King. Hanzio's view was filled with wolves that were attacking him with claws and fangs from all angles. The retractable armor clashed with the sharp claws, and sparks were flying. Hanzio changed his plan and activated the repulsive force generator, which sent a pushing force out and flung all the surrounding wolves into the wolves at the back. With his path cleared, Hanzio pushed with his foot and turned up the speed of his hover boots. Wind was howling as he approached in the Wolf King at high speed. He blocked off the ferocious attacks from the Wolf King, grabbed the wolf's head, and twisted it, throwing it to the ground. He pressed his knee tightly against the wolf's stomach and pressed on its head with his left hand. Clenching his right fist, it landed right on the wolf's head. The Wolf King's head was crushed after a few punches. Blood spilled everywhere. Every time he punched, the power surging through his muscles, tendons, and bones was like a tight bow that stored great strength. It was greatly satisfying to feel at ease and in control of such great strength. A wolf's critical region was their stomach, but Hanzio preferred attacking the head more. After a few punches, the Wolf King was only a few breaths away from death. The wolf pack was howling and had all abandoned the enemies to attack Hanzio. A huge pack of wolves piled on top of him like a small hill. Boom! A muffled sound erupted, and fragments of the grenade shot out with the flames caused by the explosion. The pack of wolves howled mournfully as fresh blood gushed out from their bodies. The players were left to the sidelines as they could only stare in shock and bewilderment as Hanzio killed every beast that came his way. He was a mechanic, so how did he end up in a melee close-range fight? The players' eyes were all drawn to Hanzio's elegant fighting style. It was undeniable that he was really suave. He was redefining the way most of them viewed mechanics. Soon, the wild pack of beasts had all retreated, leaving corpses strewn across the floors, soaking the ground in bright red blood. He exhaled a breath and wiped off the traces of blood left on his armor. With his stats, dealing with such low-level beasts would leave them completely crushed. He still had 40% of his stamina left. Mechanics rarely fought their enemies by close combat. However, doing this occasionally did make him feel refreshed, rather than using a fighting style that relied on sniping, which would lead to an instant death with each shot. This kind of real fist fighting feeling was much more suitable for distressing. Opening the forum, Hanzio realized that there were players who had uploaded a video footage of the fight just now. The title was shocking. Overpowered. Mechanics can actually fight like this. The recording showed Hanzio almost single-handedly conquering a wild beast fight. Real-time comments and replies mostly conveyed shock and amazement. But he realized that below the post, there was a reply that was manually pushed up. Looking at the ID, it was Luzman. His tone was as harsh as before. Black Phantom is indeed very strong, I won't deny that, but mechanics are really trash. Look carefully at the start of the video. Espers are the central force when fighting with wild beasts, and those players who advance to become mechanics can only sit at the side and fire aimlessly without a single use for them. I presume this clip was probably recorded by a mechanic. Other than the mechanics who can be idling at one side, I guess no other players would have this kind of time in an actual fight. Also, stop sharing Black Phantom's videos. This asshole wants to trick me into becoming a mechanic again. As he continued down the post, the replies split into those who supported Luzman and those who disagreed with him. A player walked over. The ID above his head read Laughing Blade. He asked, "Frenzied Sword." Once Frenzied Sword saw this person, his face fell as he dryly replied, "It's you. So, you're here to play Galaxy as well. Why aren't you playing Night anymore?" "Haha, it's not challenging enough," Laughing Blade said half-mockingly. In the past, Frenzied Sword had also been a professional gamer in Night. In official competitions, he had suffered countless defeats to Laughing Blade, and his fame was far from that of Laughing Blade. Laughing Blade saw the rewards assigned to Frenzied Sword on Galaxy Times and realized that his old opponent was better off than him. Feeling green from jealousy, he intentionally came to stir up trouble. "Since we've met, let's have a PvP duel. I'm an Esper, what about you?" "Mechanic." Frenzied Sword was slightly hesitant. Even though he was under Han Zio's mentorship, his current mechanic abilities were very unsuited for battle. Subconsciously, he wanted to reject the duel. Unexpectedly, Laughing Blade suddenly said, "Since we've known each other for so many years, let's have a friendly duel. You can't possibly reject a small request like this, or do you look down on me?" Frenzied Sword was speechless. Those words made it hard for him to reject. There was no need to have a falling out with someone in the same industry over something small like this. He wanted to have a duel with Frenzied Sword only because he had gained some popularity on Galaxy. Once he obtained some fame, it made him easy to become someone else's prey. If he were to defeat Frenzied Sword, he could probably tone down the latter's popularity. For a professional gamer who had attended a program to be defeated by him, he could become a little more famous as well. Han Zio watched with interest from the side. Laughing Blade, no impression of him. Probably not important enough in Galaxy. Frenzied Sword would eventually become a legendary player in the future, but right now, he was bowing his head to Laughing Blade. "Come here." Frenzied Sword was a little confused as he followed orders accordingly. Han Zio took off his thermoelectrical incisor gloves, secretly giving them to him. With a look at the glove stats, Frenzied Sword's breathing stopped for a moment, his face overcome with shock and surprise. "I'm only lending them to you, you have to return them." Han Zio erased Frenzied Sword's unrealistic hopes. Frenzied Sword was still very touched. It was the right decision to suck up to Han Zio. He could even receive such a benefit. Is it because he's afraid that I'll lose, making him lose face? Putting on the gloves, Frenzied Sword had a greater sense of confidence. Standing 15 meters apart from Laughing Blade, both of them braced themselves, getting ready to attack. Nearby, players began crowding around to watch the show. They were mainly curious about Frenzied Sword and wanted to see the difference between a professional gamer who had his name reported on the system and a regular player. Even if he is a professional player, he should be about the same level in these early stages. His pistol can only fire at most 5 shots, and my abilities can definitely hold him off. As long as I close the distance between us, he's definitely finished. Laughing Blade thought. Laughing Blade's decision was correct, but Frenzied Sword's reaction gave Laughing Blade a shock. Instead of moving back and using the pistol to kite him, he rushed forward instead. Both people quickly collided into one another. Without thinking twice, Laughing Blade sent his fist, which was wrapped in sandstone armor, flying toward Frenzied Sword, and Frenzied Sword met his fist with his black gloved palm. Could this glove be special equipment? Just as Laughing Blade had this thought, he suddenly experienced a series of burning pains. Stunned, he realized that his health points were reduced to 0 in that moment. His vision turned black as he immediately died. From the start to end, this duel only lasted 3 seconds. On the battlefield, only Frenzied Sword remained. The wind blew up the edges of his clothes. Expressionless, he truly resembled a solitary professional at the top of his game. The surrounding players watched, dazed, unable to react. Was that an instant KO? That's way too fast, too overpowered. No wonder he could get on Galaxy Times. What kind of godly attack power was this? Everyone stared at Frenzied Sword's glove, envy showing on their faces. That is high-level equipment. Mechanics can make something like that. I thought they could only make guns. I really want one too. Not long after, the revived Laughing Blade ran over, his face looking dark as he said unhappily, "Didn't we agree that it would be a friendly battle? How could you? He originally wanted to say how could he have killed him, but he felt that saying it would be too shameful. Having defeated an old opponent, Frenzied Sword only felt refreshed from being able to settle all the discontent from the past as he chuckled. Sorry, I didn't know you were so vulnerable. This sentence made Laughing Blade so angry that he could felt the heat rising up from his chest. Calling me vulnerable for dying. It was a complete loss for him. Dying once cost him a lot of EXP. Laughing Blade was very upset. He initially thought that once the duel reached a certain point, they would end it, but he did not expect to be an instant killed. Not to mention he could not even blame Frenzied Sword. He was so distressed that he could feel his heart tightening up over this horrible situation. After the crowd around them had left, Frenzied Sword obediently returned the gloves to Han Zio, hesitating as he asked, Han, Black Phantom, are you selling these gloves? Han Zio looked at him from the side of his eye, opening up the shop listing as he added Therma Electrical Incisor gloves at a fixed price of 80,000 with a reputation of 15 points. This set of gloves was a prize that he had seized from Rose Militant. After learning the basic knowledge up front, he had instead experimented to create the blueprints to create the Therma Electrical Incisor gloves. By spending some EXP, he could make one on his own now. Frenzied Sword was instantly motivated. Excitedly, he clenched his fists. This close combat equipment designed for mechanics was his favorite. I can't afford it now, but I will be able to, sooner or later. Then, Laughing Blade suddenly inched closer. His gaze lit. He stared at Han Zio and asked, Black Phantom, I heard you're enemies with Germinal. I want to join you. In this time frame, the discussion board had all sorts of different guesses as to how one could trigger the Black Phantom's secret quest. They thought that as long as one showed their intention to become Germinal's enemies, there was a chance that they could trigger Black Phantom's secret quest. Many players were guessing the phrase to trigger that. In his short time in Green Valleyville, Han Zio had heard several of such guesses and had rejected them all. Han Zio raised an eyebrow and said, Oh, you seem to be not bad. There's a lead. Laughing Blade grinned in surprise. Frenzied Sword's heart fell. Getting nervous, he could feel a strong sense of discomfort welling within him for some reason. But you don't seem to be up to par yet. Han Zio suddenly changed his words as he waved, rejecting Laughing Blade. Laughing Blade had not even finished his breath and was left speechless for a while. His expression was annoyed. With his heart full of jealousy toward Frenzied Sword, he muttered to himself in anger, This guy is really some lucky dog. Frenzied Sword heaved a sigh of relief, regaining his composure. Han Zio almost laughed aloud upon seeing Frenzied Sword's reaction, as if he were a guy who had almost been cheated on. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.